What's up? Jeff from RetroArcadeGaming.com, that's all one word, back with another edition of Port Battles. In this series, we take a look at a specific classic arcade game and see how well or poorly it's been ported to various home console and computer systems over the years. Up this week, a Williams classic from 1982, Joust. I don't know if there's a plot or a backstory to Jouste. The premise of the game is pretty simple. You fly around on an ostrich, I don't know, maybe it's a stork, and attempt to defeat the enemy knights who happen to ride around on buzzards. You defeat them by hitting them with your lance higher than their lance. Upon defeat, the enemies turn into eggs, which you need to collect before they hatch into new enemies. Pterodactyls show up randomly and are damn near impossible to beat. You need to hit them in the center of the mouth when it's open. There's a lava troll that lurks at the bottom of the screen. You won't really know that unless you get too close to the flames. If you do, his hand will grab you and attempt to pull you to your death. You need to flap as fast as possible. Just don't let your mom catch you. And try to free yourself from his grasp. It's a fun game to play, even better when played in co-op mode with a buddy. Here's a look at the arcade version of Joust via MAME. The big question I had to ask myself when putting together this video was whether or not to include clones. There are a number of systems that never got an official Joust port, but had some pretty good clones. For sake of comparison, I've gone ahead and selected a number of clones to include in this video. I apologize in advance if I left out your favorite, as I certainly haven't included all of them. Up first, we're going to take a look at an officially licensed port for the Atari 2600, which was released by Atari themselves in 1983. For the platform, this is actually a pretty good port. It lacks a lot of the details of the original, such as the rock formations, which are just lines in this port. The flying birds and characters are single colors, but really, it looks and plays like Joust should on the 2600. Sounds are pretty minimal and bland overall, but this is a good effort for the 2600. The Apple II got an official AtariSoft port in 1983 as well. Graphically, this one looks pretty good. The elements of the original are present, again, just lacking a bit of detail. The sounds in this one are pretty bad, but as expected, they were designed to come out of a built-in speaker, so they are what they are. Overall, not a bad port for the Apple II. The Atari 5200 port was released by Atari themselves in 1983. Again, not a bad port for the platform. It's not as detailed as the original, but it doesn't look too bad. Again, sounds are fairly basic and minimal. The port does seem to play a bit faster than it should, but that doesn't really detract from the gameplay. It's just a bit of an adjustment from some of the other ports. Again, a decent effort for the 5200. The ZX Spectrum did not get an official port of Jouste, but several clones are available, including Ostron and Winged Warlords. Today we're going to take a look at Ostron, which can also be found under the name Jouste, surprisingly. It was published by Softtech and designed by Andrew Gleister in 1983. I apologize if I butchered your name, Andrew. Since there was no official Jouste port, this is about as good as it's going to get. The graphics aren't great, nor is the sound, but it does look and feel like Jouste. If you're curious, I think Winged Warriors actually looks a little bit better, but it's a keyboard-only game, which my current setup is not designed to play. Here's a look at Ostron for the Sinclair ZX Spectrum. The Atari 8-bit port is from 1983 and was again released by Atari themselves. Again, starting to sound like a broken record here, this is a pretty good port for the platform. The birds and characters are still a single color, but the rock formations have a bit more detail than we've seen in the previous ports. Sounds are not great, but they're not terrible either. This is a nice playable port for the Atari 8-bit systems. Up next, the MS-DOS port, which was released by AtariSoft in 1983. There's not a whole lot of color in this one, as it's a CGA title, but it looks decent and plays decent. Sounds, again, are a bit lackluster, but that's more a limitation of the PC speaker than the port itself. As far as MS-DOS ports go, this one, pretty good. Joust VGA is a freeware clone that was released in 1990 by Dave and Ron Sharpless, again for MS-DOS. This one looks better than the CGA port, obviously, and sounds a bit better, although I still don't think the sounds are great. It plays okay, but the egg drop is kind of out of whack. The eggs fly too fast and almost straight down. In the options section, there is a gravity section that may affect that, but I haven't really messed with it, and I don't really intend to. Otherwise, it's not a bad option if you want to play Joust in DOS. We'll get to the ultimate DOS port a bit later. If you're a fan of the TRS-80 color computer, or CoCo as it's more commonly known, you didn't get an official port of Joust. Your best option was a clone entitled Buzzard Bait, released in 1983 by Tom Mix Software. Once again, not a bad port for the platform it's running on. It lacks a lot of detail and isn't quite as colorful, but there is no mistaking what game you're playing. It sounds a bit better than most of the ports we've looked at so far. The Commodore 64 also didn't get an official port, but instead got a number of clones. Today we're going to take a look at Jouste, spelled with an E, Jouste. This was published by IJK Software in 1984. It's got pretty good detail and sounds okay. The egg seems a bit out of place to me, perhaps a bit oversized. The game seems to play a bit sluggish as well. Among the other 64 clones were Lancer Lord, Duel, and Alpha Warriors, just to name a few. They all captured the spirit of Joust, each with their own unique set of faults. Regardless, this is Jouste, spelled with an E, for the Commodore 64. The Atari ST got an official port in 1986, developed in-house by Atari themselves. This is an excellent port, which looks almost identical to the original arcade game. It does fall a bit short in the sound department, as the sounds just quite aren't up to par. Despite that, a nice effort and fun to play on the Atari ST. The Nintendo Entertainment System got a port in 1987 by HAL Laboratory. This is not a bad effort, although it lacks a bit of detail, particularly the enemies and the enemy buzzards. The rocks look decent, and it obviously looks and feels like you're playing Joust. Again, I'm not overly impressed by the sound effects, but it's a solid effort for the NES. The Atari Lynx got an official port in 1992. This one was developed by Showdowns, and it's an awesome port for the Lynx. It looks just like Joust should, and surprisingly has the most authentic sounds of all the ports we've played so far. If you're a Joust fan, you've got an Atari Lynx, you won't be disappointed with this port. The Commodore Amiga did not get an official release, but got the clone Jouster 3, released by Pawprint in 1995. This is actually a clone of the 1986 Atari ST port. Again, it looks excellent, but falls a bit short in the sound department, in my opinion. Otherwise, totally playable and a good effort for the Commodore Amiga. 1995 also saw Joust released for the Game Boy in the title Arcade Classic 4 Defender Joust. It plays pretty well, but obviously lacks some detail and color. If you had the Super Game Boy adapter for the SNES, you could play this one with color. It's a pretty good implementation on the Game Boy, with the only minor irritant being that it goes back to a press flap to play screen after every loss of life. I wish it were seamless like the original game. Unfortunately, this is due to one of the bigger limitations of this port, which only allows for two-player alternating play. The game doesn't support the link cable, which would have made two-player simultaneous play a possibility. While we're here, let's go ahead and take a look at the Game Boy Color version, which was repackaged as Midway Presents Arcade Hits, Joust, Defender, and released in 1999. Again, for the platform, this is a pretty good port and plays about as you would expect it to. Two players are restricted to alternating play, and there's no co-op. From here on out, most of these will look and sound pretty similar with a few exceptions. These are all from Williams or Midway compilations, and most look and sound almost identical to the arcade original. We won't spend a lot of time offering up critiques because there really isn't much to complain about. Up first, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System port from the Williams Arcade's Greatest Hits compilation, released by Midway in 1996. Along with Joust, this compilation includes Defender, Defender 2, also known as Stargate, Robotron, and Sinistar. The Sega Genesis port is from the same Williams Arcade's Greatest Hits compilation, again released by Midway in 1996, and featuring the same games as the Super NES counterpart. These actually are not running the arcade ROMs, but are running translated versions of the arcade ROMs. The PlayStation also got a port of Williams Arcade Greatest Hits in 1996. Unlike the Genesis and Super NES titles, this one also includes Bubbles. The Saturn got its own release in 1996 entitled Midway Presents Arcade's Greatest Hits. This one is similar to the Genesis and Super NES ports and does not include Bubbles. Rounding out the 1996 releases is the Williams Arcade Greatest Hits release for MS-DOS. This is similar in nature to the PlayStation port and includes bubbles. If your DOS machine can handle it, this is the best option, obviously, for that platform. The year 2000, saw the release of Midway's Greatest Arcade Hits Volume 1 for the Nintendo 64, with a slightly different lineup than the previous releases. This compilation included Joust, Defender, Robotron, Sinistar, Spy Hunter, and Tapper. Also in 2000, we got the same Midway Greatest Arcade Hits compilation for the Sega Dreamcast. This one is similar to the 1995 releases as far as title lineup and includes Joust, Defender, Defender 2, Stargate, Robotron, Sinistar, and Bubbles. ...2001 saw Midway's greatest arcade hits released for the Game Boy Advance. This is a watered-down release and only features Defender, Sinistar, Robotron, and Joust. It doesn't include a two-player mode, which is to be expected for the device it's on. The PlayStation 2 and GameCube both got releases via the Midway Arcade Treasures compilation, released in 2000. This release features 24 ports including Joust, Joust 2, 720, Blaster, Bubbles, Defender, Defender 2 or Stargate, Gauntlet, Clax, Marble Madness, Paperboy, Rampage, Rampart, Road Blasters, Robotron, Tapper, Satan's Hollow, Sinistar, Smash TV, Splat, Spy Hunter, Super Sprint, Tubin, and Vindicators. We'll take a look at the GameCube version first, then we'll jump to the PlayStation 2 version. The PlayStation 2 version only differs in presentation, but the content is exactly the same as the GameCube version. Midway Arcade Treasures was also available for Windows PCs. A new platform, and we'll take a look at Midway Arcade Treasures Extended Play for the PlayStation Portable, which was released in 2005. This one has 21 ports, including 720, Arch Rivals, Championship Sprint, Cyberball 2072, Defender, Gauntlet, Joust, Clax, Marble Madness, Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3, Paperboy, Rampage, Rampart, Sinistar, Spy Hunter, Tubin, Wizard of War, Xenophobe, and Zybots. Next, we're going to take a look at Joust, which was released to the original Xbox Live Arcade for the Xbox 360 in 2005. There are two graphic modes on this one, original and enhanced. The enhanced mode is pretty nice. I'll toggle between the two at some point during gameplay, just so you can see the differences. This one also allowed online two-player co-op play. Finally, there was an unreleased prototype for the ColecoVision that was being developed by AtariSoft. It never saw an official release, but the prototype surfaced at the Classic Gaming Expo in 2001. It was incomplete, lacking music and sound effects. In 2014, Team Pixelboy released a fully implemented version of Joust for the ColecoVision, based in part off this early AtariSoft prototype. The Team Pixelboy release is priced at $45, which, in my opinion, is just a little too steep for a title for a 32-year-old system. I understand that they have production costs. At $15, I might be inclined to purchase it, but not at $45. As it is, we'll be taking a look today at the unfinished AtariSoft prototype that initially surfaced in 2001. That concludes our look at Joust ports. It took a lot of work to get some of these ports to work properly. In particular, I had trouble with the Nintendo 64 port for some reason, and also the Sega Dreamcast port. I think that had more to do with the emulators I was using, and I had to get those corrected so I could include them, which involved setting up and downloading different emulators. We've covered pretty much everything with the exception of a lot of clones. A number of clones for the Amstrad Color PC. The Team Pixelboy ColecoVision release was ported to the MSX. The TI-99-4A had Henpecked, which is loosely based on Joust. I mean, we could go on and on and on listing clones that we didn't include. Midway Arcade Origins was released for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 in 2012. That version of Joust is not much different, if at all, than the one we looked at from the Xbox Arcade. To my surprise, none of these ports are that bad. They are all recognizable as Joust and play fairly similar to the arcade version. Anything from about 1995 on is going to play almost identical to the actual arcade release. If you've got a desire to play Joust, you won't go wrong with one of the compilation collections. In addition, you'll get a few bonus games to go along with it. My favorites are probably the GameCube, PS2, and PSP compilations, just for the sheer number of games available. With that, we're going to flap on out of here. We'll see you next time. Until then, happy gaming. Peace.